I'm looking at a bird and it's got a spot on the back of it. It looks funny. Yeah, 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 yeah. Bitsy Lou Who, how are you? Y'all, I just can't wait to read this book. It's gonna be one of those, so y'all gonna have to go. Mynae, it's time to stop. It's midnight. I'm looking at a bird. It's not a. This is not going to be a sexy read. Jackie's in the house. It's not going to be a sexy read, but man, this book's good. I mean, this book's good, y'all. And I got some male voices going on. It's going to be good. It's about time you got your fanny back in here, Miss Jackie. We've been missing you, sister. I've been missing you, missing you, missing you. Is it Friday yet? Hope you got your earplugs in. Oh, yeah. Got some good guy voices going on tonight. And girl voice. Listen while you work. Oh, that's whistle while you work. Quinn says she may be late because she's got to go. She went to Walmart. So. I hate it when I do whatever it is I do and it doesn't pop up. Oh, there it is. Okay, 8:05. I have to leave my mouse down there, I guess, for a moment. I thought I changed it. Oh, y'all ready? There's flies flying around in here, and it's driving me crazy. They were in the kitchen, and I guess they followed me in here. Flies flying in my window, and plus water, and hummingbirds flying outside my window. I feel like I'm being invaded. Okay. Right. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started, and everybody can join as everybody joins. Looks like we got a couple of people not commenting, so maybe they're just our stalkers. So it's called Specter's Wake by Quinn Ryder. Is that not hot, y'all? That is Boomer Pshaw, y'all. Okay. So. And it's Book 1 in the Devil's Armada MC. Do I need to read trigger warning for you guys? Just, if anything triggers, just don't. Okay? Prologue. I never saw it coming. As the club's tail gunner, it was my job to watch everyone's back. You could call me the club safety man, the one that made sure the roads were clear, steady, and free to ride. As the rear lead, I was the road's captain, right-hand man. A shadow sweeper that kept everyone in their lane and out of harm's way. My loyalty bled brighter than the cut on my back. I never questioned what I was told. I kept my eyes on the road and believed in the family I helped to protect. I always had everyone's back until someone shot me in mine. The bastard couldn't even look me in the eye. He waited until I wasn't looking to take me out of the equation, and when he thought he got the best of me, he buried me in a shallow grave on the outskirts of town. I've tried to figure out what I did wrong, what I could have said to make one of my own brothers turn on me, but none of it makes any sense. I did everything right. I was dedicated to the family. I never asked questions, even when they did shit I didn't agree with. If I hadn't caught a glimpse of the familiar Devil's Armada logo right before he started shoveling dirt over my nearly dead body, I would have never believed that someone from the family had a hand in my murder attempt. I wish I could have seen his face, but all I could see was the cut on his back and a flash of dark hair. He may have buried Midas in that shallow grave, but it was a different man that clawed his way out of the muddied earth thirsting for revenge. Now that I've lost the only family I've ever had, all I have left to live for is her. The hardest part about that night wasn't digging myself out of my grave and recovering from my bullet wound. It was turning my back on Faith and allowing her to think I was dead. Returning to the family without knowing who tried to kill me would only put her in danger. I couldn't risk her life, not when I knew somebody wanted me dead. They'd kill her to get to me, and her life meant more to me than my own life ever would. So I left her. I left them all. I had to turn my back on the only woman who ever truly loved me for me. She didn't care that I was bruised and broken. She didn't see my size and run away like I was some sideshow freak. Faith loved me unconditionally. It didn't matter that I was 350 pounds of leather and abandonment issues. She loved every pound on my body and all the scars hidden underneath. It was that unconditional acceptance that drew me to her in the first place. Faith is the type of woman who loved everyone, and everyone loved her in return. It was easy to fall in love with someone whose only flaw was being too kind. That's what I loved most about her. Faith didn't have a mean bone in her body, and I did everything in my power to protect her from the club's extracurricular activities. I was ready to make her my old lady and circle that beautiful finger with my ring. That ring now sits heavy in my pocket, waiting for the day I can drop to one knee and pledge my life to her. She had no idea I was going to propose, and it kills me that they took that moment away from us. That's why leaving her hurt me more than the betrayal of my brothers. Faith was my world, and someone worked incredibly hard to shatter that world into itty-bitty pieces. I have no idea what her life's been like since I've been away, or if she'll even forgive me for leaving her like this. But I have to try. My life just isn't the same without her in it. It's been 7 long years since I last saw her, and I didn't plan on coming out of hiding this soon. When I got a mysterious email from an unknown email address telling me that Faith's life was in danger, I knew it was time to come out of hiding and reclaim what's mine. My only questions now are, who was the mysterious mailer? Who did they find? How did they find me? And can I trust what they're telling me is true? Midas may be dead, but the man who crawled out of his grave is ready to return home and find his faith again. Chapter 1, Faith. Everybody knows not to enter Devil's Armada territory. There are strict rules involving the lines that have been drawn between the 4 major MCs that ride in Garter County. Our club owns most of the county, and the other 3 get to pick through their scraps. That's how it's always been. The Scorched Brotherhood rides in the east, the Venomous Vipers claimed what's left of the west, and the Diablo Saints do their best to take what's not theirs. It's a hierarchy that's lasted for over 2 decades, and everyone knows that if they step across our borders, it's probably the last step they'll ever take. That's the kind of attitude you need to have when you ride on the outside of the law. I used to believe in the good of humanity. I once dreamed of that white picket fence and a life that wasn't all about booze, male egos, and motorcycles. Then my dream for a happier life died when the man I loved was murdered in cold blood. His death hardened me. I went from being a kind, carefree spirit to the mean bitch that runs the club's bar. Everyone knows better than to mess with me because if they do, my family will step in. I can hold my own, but it's nice to know that a bunch of burly men have my back when shit starts to get hairy. Being the younger sister of the club president does have its perks. I do my best to stay out of club business, but occasionally they bring their shit into my bar. I can't even count how many times I've had to replace glasses and tables because some idiot decided to wander in here where they don't belong. The rules are simple. I only serve club members, their friends, and the few sweet butts who are lucky enough to drag their high heels and boots through my bar. I guess that's why when he walked through the door, it caught me totally off guard. Civilians don't just waltz into the devil's watering hole. They know better. Yet, there he is. 6 feet of pure muscle and tattoos, strolling through the front door like he owned the place. He looked around, pausing for a few seconds when he saw me standing behind the bar, before moving over to a dark booth in the corner. He didn't pick up a menu, and he didn't look around. He just sat in the corner, fingers clasped together, staring at his hands like he was saying a silent prayer. "Are you fucking lost?" I yelled from behind the bar. The man didn't look up, nor did he acknowledge my question, which only pissed me off. "Listen, asshole, this bar is only for the Devil's Armada and their friends. You're obviously not part of the Armada, and sure as shit ain't one of our friends. So why don't you get up and take your happy ass straight back out that door before my family comes in here and scrapes you across the pavement?" When he didn't move from the booth, I started to panic. My brother warned me that things were starting to heat up between the club and our rivals, the Diablo Saints. He gave me a gun for my protection, and I've never had to use it before, but for some reason, this man was making me feel uneasy. I grabbed the pistol from behind the counter and held it with shaking hands. At the bottom, I was the only person in the bar other than him. Or, where did I read that bottom? Where did I get that? At the moment, I was the only person in the bar other than him. The family was at church having one of their secret meetings, and my barback had the day off. I was hesitant to approach him, even though he wasn't wearing anything that showed an allegiance to a rival MC. I walked over toward his booth and aimed the gun straight at his temple, ready to pull the trigger if he dared to move. I said, get out. He finally looked up at me, and to my surprise, instead of getting angry that I had a gun pointed at his face, he smirked. That's a lot of heat for someone so pretty to carry. I couldn't see his eyes behind the thick black sunglasses he had on, nor could I see much of his face behind the short brown beard. But damn, that voice was gripping me by the ovaries. Gruff, sex, and riddled with mystery. What? I was flummoxed. Yeah, flummoxed. Seriously, I had no idea what to say. I wasn't expecting him to compliment me like that, and it totally threw me off my game. I said, that's a lot of heat for someone so pretty to carry. My finger tapped nervously against the trigger. I couldn't tell if he was fucking with me or flirting with me. You should probably leave before I shoot you. The corners of his mouth ticked upward as his smirk slid into a full smile. For a second, I was paralyzed. It's been a long time since a man has made me feel this nervous. Are you really going to shoot a man that's been on a very long ride and only looking to buy a drink? We don't serve outside patrons in this bar. I tried to control my hand, but the nerves shook through me, the gun bouncing in my quaking grasp. That's too bad, because I got a dry mouth and a lot of money burning through my pocket that I'm looking to spend. He pulled a wad of cash out of his pocket and threw it on the table. I had to admit, the bar was in desperate need of some new business. My brother did his best to keep us afloat, but most members didn't like to pay for their drinks, and serving alcohol to non-paying customers didn't help keep the lights on. If they catch you in here, they'll kill you. I'm willing to take that chance. He slid off his sunglasses, and my heart literally stopped beating inside of my chest. There's something about him that made me unable to move, a strange feeling, one that I hadn't felt in a very long time, ignited a spark deep inside my belly. Men didn't turn me on this way. I only used them for sex and made sure never to get too close. But the twinkle in the man's eye after it gave me a quick wink had my face heating up like a volcano. What the fuck was happening to me? My arms dropped, taking my guard down with it, and what I said next surprised me. So tell me, stranger, what's your poison? His smile spread even further. Darling, I thought you'd never ask. Chapter 2, Holden. I had to compose myself when I walked through the bar door. I wasn't expecting to see her so soon, but there she was, standing behind the bar, looking even more beautiful than when I last saw her. I stood there for a second, just staring at her, before I quickly found a booth near the back of the bar. I didn't want to blow my cover too soon, and the longer I stood there, the more eager I was to tell her I had come back for her. I could feel her eyes watching me the whole time, and when she started shouting at me, I couldn't help but smile. This woman was nothing like the Faith I remembered. She was sassy and strong. She handled a gun like she actually knew how to use it, even if her hand shook like it was rattled with nerves. The Faith I left behind wouldn't touch a gun. She didn't want to get involved in club business. Now she was running the bar. I think back to the night I was shot and how her image was the only thing that drove me to dig myself out of that grave. I remember that night very vividly, almost as if I was still clawing my way out of the earth, desperate to breathe in clean air again. Dirt clung to my tongue like a thick paste that clogged the back of my throat. I woke up briefly as my attacker shoveled dirt down on top of me. But I was in shock and couldn't call out for help. I'll admit, I was a little bit afraid too. If I called out for help, he'd just shoot me again, but this time he would finish the job. I waited until I heard the muffled roar of a motorcycle speeding away before I started digging my way back up to the surface. My back was killing me, and the more I moved, the more it felt like I was fighting for air. Clawing my way out of the ground was a lot harder than I expected. My body was deteriorating, and I could barely get my muscles moving as I attempted to escape the shallow grave I was placed in. 3 feet more, and I would have never found salvation. But whoever buried me was in a hurry, and they forgot one important thing. I was a big man, a man who had the strength of 20 tanks when my adrenaline kicked in. I had to punch my way to the surface, holding what was left of my breath as I fought with the soul that held me down in my underground prison. Somehow, despite all the odds, I had survived. Pulling a 350-pound body out of the dirt was not easy for me, not when I'd been shot in the back and was bleeding out externally. Once I was free, I laid on top of my grave, gasping for breath as blood seeped out of my wound. I needed help, but there was nobody I could trust anymore, at least no one that was connected with the club. So I did what any other man would do after almost being murdered. I found a large log nearby, rolled it very painfully over to the grave, dropped it in the hole, and covered it up. If my attacker ever came back, the log would at least give him the impression that somebody was buried below. Hopefully, he didn't return to dig up my body and bury me somewhere else. I knew that my bike was probably still near the road. My attacker didn't have time to get rid of it. He'd probably come back later to dispose of it when fewer people were out. I hobbled out toward the highway and found my bike hidden under some loose brush in the tree line. I barely noticed it. If it wasn't for the moonlight hitting the chrome just right, I probably would have never seen it at all. My attacker had moved my bike, but only enough to not bring any attention to it. I groaned as I picked the heavy machine up off the ground and pushed it out of the brush. Then it took all the effort I had left in my body to get the bike started. Moving made the pain even worse, and I swear the wound in my back was oozing out even more blood. I knew if I didn't get help fast, I'd be dead by sunup. Once the bike was started, I somehow managed to drive to the nearest hospital in town. It was only 5 miles away, but it was well into Viper territory. At that moment, I didn't care. All I wanted to do was survive the night. I pulled into the small hospital's emergency loading dock and collapsed just outside the door. Everything that happened from there was a blur. I had no memories of staying in the hospital or who I was at the time. At least that's what I let the hospital believe when I finally came to. My identification, my cut, everything that identified me as part of the devil's armada had been stripped from my body before I was buried. The doctors called me John Doe, and I didn't correct them, because if anyone knew I was alive, I'd be dead by the next morning. After 3 days of admittance and recovery, and a lot of probing questions from a local cop I chose not to answer, I left the tiny hospital and never looked back. I left everything behind that day. I ditched my bike deep in Viper country, taking the wheels off and some chrome to make it look like it had been chopped. Then I hitched a ride on a semi-truck that drove all the way to Dallas. My only regret was not finding Faith before I left and begging her to come with me. Faith slammed a bottle of whiskey on the table and backed away. She refused to turn around, fear plaguing her eyes as she moved silently back toward the bar. I realized that things going on in the club were drastically different now. Faith feared outsiders, something she had never done before. What was the club doing that would have her so paranoid? What kind of hanky shit did they have their fingers in? Before I left, the only shit the club got involved with was the occasional transport of stolen goods. Dutch ran the club with an iron fist. He kept the club out of doing the hard shit and did his best to keep our nose clean with the law. Under Dutch's thumb, I always felt safe. He was the perfect man to be patched in as president of the Devil's Armada, always firm but never a coward. Dutch didn't put up with anyone's shit, and that's why I liked him. He was more of a father to me than my own dad ever was. I was just a young kid from the wrong side of the tracks who happened to stumble upon the clubhouse by accident. I was lucky they didn't pulverize me right there. But Dutch, hell, he saved my life. He had a soft spot for misfits and wanderers, and when he saw the fear and desperation in my eyes, he took pity on me. I think it was because I reminded him of his own children. I was the same age as Seth when he found me, and it didn't take me long to fall into his ranks. I started by sweeping the shop, watching the club with envious eyes as they formed a family I desperately wanted. My own parents wanted nothing to do with me and discarded me like a piece of trash the second they could. My father used to make fun of my weight, calling me a no good fat piece of shit that wasn't worthy enough to lick his steel toe boots. I used to blame his behavior on his alcohol addiction, but it wasn't long before I realized my dad was just a shitty person in general. My mom only encouraged his behavior, taking his side and babying him when she should have been taking care of me. When I turned 17 and could no longer handle being my dad's punching bag or my mom's disappointment, I skipped town and somehow found myself deep in the heart of Armada country. After a few months of being shop bitch, I earned the title of prospect, and it wasn't long before I had my own bike and was climbing the ranks until I found a steady foot at the club's tail gunner. Being in the Devil's Armada gave me the family I always wanted, and somewhere along the way I fell in love with Dutch's daughter, Faith. Hey, Quinn! Sith used to give me shit for fawning over his sister, but it wasn't long before we had both Sith and Dutch's blessing. I treated Faith like the princess she was, and since I was like a second son to Dutch, I had his blessing to make Faith my old lady for good. Just thinking about all the things I had planned for us brought tears to my eyes. I was supposed to marry this woman, and now she couldn't even recognize me. Not that I expected her to. I went from a cleanly shaven, obese bastard without any ink to a lean, tattooed asshole with a ghostly past. I looked nothing like my former self, and sometimes when I looked in the mirror, I had a hard time even recognizing the person staring back at me. The man in the mirror was the opposite of everything Midas stood for. Midas was about pride and protection. He didn't give a shit about how he looked or what people thought of him. His life revolved around the club and keeping Faith safe. And when he died, so did his purpose. Midas wouldn't have lost half his body weight, grown a beard, or bothered marring his skin with something as trivial as tattoos. He didn't need it, but Midas was dead, and Holden needed a second skin, something that would conceal him safely in the shadows and away from those who wished him harm. Now my body was a canvas of pointless ink, with only a few illustrations thrown in that I actually gave a shit about. I hated my beard too. It's itchy and gets in the way of eating. It's also a bitch to keep tame because my whiskers are assholes that do what they want to and could give two shits about my comfort. The beard was an unfortunate evil that had to stay, at least for now, because it hid the scar my family would immediately recognize if I shaved my face. It wasn't easy hiding a 2-inch scar that dragged across the length of my face behind anarchist chin whiskers that refused to cooperate. If I kept my beard too short, I ran the risk of my scar making an appearance. If I kept it too long, I'd look like Adam Parrish when he emerged from the board game in Jumanji. I even used fucking contacts to change the colors of my eyes. They used to be a cool ice blue. Now they're a mix between slate gray and amber. The most difficult thing to disguise had to be my voice. While down in Texas, I picked up a southern twang and learned to control my tone, making it deeper and more seductive. Even my own mother couldn't recognize my voice anymore. I would call the house every once in a while to check up on her, but I always have some stupid bullshit excuse as to why I called. Sometimes I pretended to have the wrong number. Other times I would just sit and listen to her say hello. I'd done this move on Faith too, but I never had the guts to speak to her either. Being a ghost was harder than it looked, and every day that I lived underneath this ghostly facade was another day I had to go without her. Before her, but her. But here she was standing before me, a completely different person than the woman who stole my heart. Faith was a hardened woman. I could see it in her fear driven stare and the wobble in her shaky fingers. The carefree woman I fell in love with was gone, and now there was an armored tank surrounding her. I wonder what changed her. "What's your name?" I asked her, toying with the bottle of whiskey she gave me. "None of your business," she snipped, placing the gun on the bar. "Not much for small talk, are you?" I grumbled, taking a swig up from the glass. "No, I just don't have time for some bullshit biker that has a death wish." I laughed because her comment was hilarious. "Honey, I'm a man. A man like me laughs in the face of death. I've walked that line and evaded his grasp for far too long." She frowned. "Well, when my brother gets here and finds you inside his club, you'll be wishing it was death that found you instead." I smirked over my drink, admiring the bite in her words. Hardened or not, Faith was feisty, and a feisty woman was my favorite kind of woman to chase. I tipped the bottle in her direction. "Cheers to your brother, then. I look forward to meeting him." I take a drink and wipe my beard with the back of my hand. "And cheers to you, too. A woman who possesses both beauty and a quick tongue is a treasure when even the richest man desires." I threw her a flirtatious wink and reveled in the sudden flash of pink that highlighted her cheeks. I was getting to her, and very few words had been used to do it. Might have still had that golden touch even from beyond the grave. She opened her mouth to say something else to sass me, but she was interrupted by the revving of motorcycle engines pulling up outside. She gasped and went incredibly still. Her reaction could only mean one thing: my family had finally returned home. Chapter 3. Oh, honey, I'm on chapter 19 reading this book, and I can't get enough time to read it. It's driving me crazy. Chapter 3, Faith. Was this guy stupid or just plain dumb? I tried to warn him about what would happen once my brother got back, but he was refusing to leave, sitting there smugly in the corner booth drinking his whiskey straight from the bottle. I couldn't protect him now. He'd be lucky to leave this place in less than a body bag. I could hear their laughter as my brother and the rest of the MC walked up to the front door. I was tempted to text Jimmy before he drove up to give him a heads up that some stranger was in our bar, but something about this man made me want to protect him. Now it was too late. My eyes swiveled over to where the strange man sat. He was encased in shadows and didn't seem concerned that a handful of bikers were about to enter the bar. "Faith, a round of beers for the family," my brother Jimmy, also known as Sith, shouted as he slammed open the doors. "It's time for a celebration. Cypher has been officially patched in as one of our brothers." The members of the Devil's Armada filed in like elephants, marching in a line. A few of them toted skanky girls in their arms, while the others plopped down in vacant booths. Nobody seemed to notice the strange man in the back of the room. Jimmy wandered up to the bar with his arm around Cypher's shoulder. shoulders. I quickly grabbed 2 beers and handed one to my brother and the other to Cypher. They both took their drinks greedily. They clinked glasses before downing their first drop, then plopped down into the chairs at the bar. I was happy that Cypher had found a home with us. He was young and new to the club, but he had proven his loyalty enough for my brother to patch him in the second his mandatory year as a prospect was up. He'd been hanging around the clubhouse for quite some time, and his unusual talents were what first attracted my brother to him. That's how he got his name. Cypher was a genius when it came to anything electronic, and his hacking skills were definitely an asset this club needed, especially with all the shit my brother seemed to be getting into lately. The club had taken an ugly turn when my father was forced to step down from his position. After my brother was patched in as president, the club went from law-abiding citizens to outlaws within days. I did my best to keep my nose out of club business, but sometimes they forget that I'm here and I overhear things I shouldn't. I like to believe that it isn't my brother's fault that the club has gone south. Switchblade, his VP, and Gorilla, his sergeant at arms, are bad influences on my brother. They are always encourage him to get involved in bad shit. My dad would never let the club get this bad. Half the senior members left when my dad was asked to step down, and my brother had no problem filling their spots with low-life assholes that spent most of their time in jail or on drugs. Cypher seemed different, though. He wasn't like the others. I actually liked him, as did most of the sweet butts looking for a man to break them in. Not only was he easy on the eyes, but his intelligence was far more advanced than any of the beer-drinking thugs who hung around my brother and Switchblade. There were only a handful of members in the Devil's Armada that I actually liked besides my brother and Cypher. The ones I did like were friends of my dad's and promised him that they would stick around to protect me. Everyone else could go to hell for all I care. I was so busy grabbing the family their drinks that I didn't even notice someone invading my space behind the bar. "Let me buy you a drink," a slimy voice whispered in my ear. "Then you can go back to my room and have a little fun." My skin crawled the second Switchblade ran his greasy fingers down my arms. I flinched away from him and moved so I couldn't feel his sad attempt of a hard-on behind me. "You know better than to be behind my bar, Curtis." I said his real name with a sarcastic tone, showing him how little I actually thought of him. Switchblade was proud of his nickname and didn't allow anyone to call him Curtis, which is why I made sure to use it as much as possible. He wasn't a bad-looking guy, I guess. He had all the makings of being attractive, tall, long blonde hair that looked like it was hardly ever washed, and he was beefy in that I spend too much time in the gym sort of way. Yeah, I guess other women would find Switchblade's meathead exterior appealing, but his attitude only made him ugly to me, and I couldn't see past his playboy, overconfident persona to consider him as anything but a thorn in my brother's side and a mosquito I wanted to slap the shit out of. His brow arched, his mouth pulling into an unnatural sneer. "The name's Switchblade, bitch, and you know not to call me anything else." "Watch out, Switchblade. That's my sister you're calling a bitch, and I won't allow you to talk to her like that." My brother defended me. Switchblade's eyes cut over to my brother before he reluctantly moved out from behind the bar. "She needs to be tied down, Sith. A woman shouldn't be able to run her mouth like she does. She needs to be someone's old lady. Mine, to be exact. I'd keep her in line better than anyone else in this club, and if she didn't listen, she would after I was fucking done with her." He raised a hand threatening me with an unclenched fist. Both Cypher and my brother quickly stood up, wedging themselves between Switchblade and me. I rolled my eyes. I would never be any man's old lady, and I sure as shit wouldn't be tied to someone as sleazy as Switchblade. You need a fucking genie to make that wish come true, Curtis. I wouldn't be touched. I wouldn't touch your dick with a 10-foot pole, let alone allow you to claim me as your old lady. Go fuck yourself. Switchblade lurched over the bar, grabbing me forcefully by the shirt. Lessons begin now, bitch. What's my fucking name? You better get it right this time. Curtis, I smarted. Switchblade's brow arched menacingly, and before I knew what was happening, his hand had cocked back and flying right for my face. Inches he came from punching my nose before someone jumped in and grabbed his arm mid-swing. If you want to keep this arm, I suggest you never touch her ever again. Seductive, southern, and goddamn sexy. That's what the mystery man's voice sounded like as he took charge of the situation. The fact that he would jump in and grab Switchblade's arm when the whole club was in the bar watching us is both a turn on and a little alarming. The dude definitely had a death wish. What the fuck? Switchblade growled and reached his hand out of the stranger's grasp. Who the fuck are you? Just a man whose drink was disturbed by your blatant display of machoism. Do you have to hit a woman to make you feel more like a man? Switchblade pulled out his knife and toyed with it in his hands. He pressed a button and the silver blade magically popped out of the hilt. The cold metal played with the neon bar lights, reflecting them on its surface. You're gonna die, motherfucker! The stranger reached behind his back and pulled out a gun, aiming it at Switchblade's head. Never bring a knife to a gunfight, son. Every man in the building was suddenly on their feet, ready to kill on command. Half the guns that were hidden behind people's backs were now pulled and aimed at the mysterious stranger, whose gaze was fixated only on Switchblade. Stop it! I screamed, desperate to break up the nonsense. Both of you need to calm the fuck down. Mister, I don't know who you are, and although I do appreciate you stepping in to help me, I don't need any man to defend my honor. I'm a big girl and can take care of myself. As for you, Curtis, learn to take a fucking joke. Both men looked over at me. The stranger reluctantly lowered his gun. Switchblade, on the other hand, lunged forward, stabbing the knife toward the stranger's stomach. It was a dick move on his part, but the stranger seemed to be ready for it because he countered the move easily and knocked the knife out of Switchblade's hand, something no man has ever been able to do. The room went eerily quiet. Even Switchblade looked stunned. You should really learn how to use that thing. You wield it like a bitch. Fuck you, motherfucker. I'm going to rip your goddamn head off. Switchblade's fist balled up against his side, and I could tell he was 2 seconds away from knocking the shit out of the stranger's smug face. For what? Protecting a lady? For commenting on your shitty knife-wielding skills? First off, you need to learn some manners. A woman should be treated with dignity and respect, not like some whore you can smack around. Second, I could see every move you made before you made it. If we were playing chess, you'd already be in checkmate, bitch. I had to admit, Mr. Sexy Stranger had massive balls. He wasn't afraid of Switchblade or anyone else in the club. The look on my brother's face was priceless. Somehow this stranger had earned Sith's respect. I could tell by my brother's stunned silence and the slight smirk that quirked at the corners of his lips That's enough. Both of you need to knock this shit off. My brother barked, breaking the silence. He turned toward the stranger. Look, I don't know who you are or why you feel like you can just walk into my bar and have a drink, but this is Armada country and outsiders aren't welcome here. But because you jumped in to protect my sister, I'm going to give you a once-in-a-lifetime pass. You got 2 seconds to pack up your shit and walk through the door without any of my brothers interfering. Otherwise, you'll be leaving my bar in a body bag. The stranger turned toward my brother and nodded. I was just leaving. He stepped away from the bar, walked over to the corner booth, and grabbed the bottle of whiskey from the table. He then slammed down a wad of cash and turned around to face me and my family. Thanks for the drink, love, he said with a smile spreading across his face. I'll be back. I don't think it was possible, but an enamored blush crept up my cheeks. Once I couldn't hide from my brother or Switchblade. Somehow, a complete stranger had left me breathless, a feat only one man had ever done before. Midas. Like hell you will, Switchblade snarled. Calm the fuck down, Switchblade. Stop being such a pussy, Jimmy said, forcing Switchblade to turn his way. Why the fuck are you defending him? I'm not, but don't get all pissy because he bested you at your own game. Calm the fuck down and go get yourself a drink. I quickly glanced over at my brother to see his expression, but by the time my eyes swiveled back over to where I last saw the stranger standing, he was already gone, vanishing into the night like a ghost. Where the fuck did that motherfucker go? Switchblade cursed. Lord, here's a voice I hadn't counted on. I forgot he had it in here. I don't know. 1 minute he was there, the next minute he was gone, Cypher remarked. Everyone looked stunned. We were all so focused on my brother and Switchblade's reactions that nobody was paying attention to the stranger. He left without a single person's eye on him. If we hadn't heard his bike start up and peel out of the parking lot, we wouldn't have believed he was there at all. I turned toward my brother, ready for whatever smart-ass remark was about to come out of his mouth, but the words he said left us stunned. Boys, I think we may have found a new prospect. Booyah! And that's all I'm reading because the next chapter's too long. So that's where I'm stopping at. Otherwise, I may never stop reading it. Quinn. I'm going to be your biggest fan. I'm just saying right now, sister, I'm going to be your biggest fan. Ladies, it gets warm on in the book. Like I told you, tonight wasn't about the sexy. It wasn't going to be all coming and screaming and moaning and going and on and stuff. No. Tonight was to get you hooked. So I'm hoping I hooked you, ladies. Because it was good. It is good. And I've been trying to get some of these voices in my head that I could do to try to get them right. But damn. Okay. Yes, Jackie. This is the first book of the Devil's Armada MC. All right. You let me know when that novella comes out because I'll be purchasing it right away. I'll pre-order it before I even get started. Oh, Vincy, you ain't even, I didn't even touch on Faith. Faith has a whole nother side of her in this book. When I saw what Faith was up to, when I saw what Faith was up to, I was like, oh. Yeah, Because oh my. Thank you, Quinn. I appreciate that. All righty. So let's get down to the important stuff about this book. I figured out how to do this now. If I can just read it, then I can see it. Whoops. About this book. Sea and Storm. Okay, it's free on KU or it's $3.99 to buy. And you guys won't hear me say this often, but it's worth the $3.99 to buy. Ooh. Damn, y'all. It's getting to where I have read so many of these motorcycle books that I'm starting to recognize the models. You'll love it. I just went down. You know how underneath, like, can you guys see? You know how down, like, here's here's Quinn's book, and then underneath it says others you might like, or customers who bought this item also bought. Well, I just went down through there and I saw Justin Michaels and Alfie on one. And I was like, dang. So, because my also might like is full of motorcycle books at the moment. So, yeah, go get it, y'all. This book rocks the world. I mean, it rocks. So, like I said, I'm on 19, and there are 26 chapters and an epilogue in the book. And there's also a soundtrack to it. See if she even listens to anything I do. No, that's not anything I listen to. So I don't even know who these. Y'all, I'm awful. Well, there's Ozzy Osbourne. I know who that is. I don't listen to this kind of music, so I don't know who this is. So, anyways, I plan on finishing this book up next couple of nights. So, and that was where I was going to next, Vincy. Saturday. We got a big old party going on from 10 to 2. It is the 1 year anniversary of the Book Nook. And these, Nina, send Quinn a personal invite, please. Or Vincy, whoever gets to it first. So the live interviews that I have down, and I'll read it to you guys, but I'm also going to post it, is Miss Nina's going to open the party up. Whoop, whoop. And then we have Thomas J.R., Andrea Pride, what is McMillan? Yeah, I just have Ebony down here. Candy Fox, Mercy DeSimon, Serenity Rain, K.L. Ramsey, Pebbles Lacassi, C. Davis or Carly Davis, she writes under both, S. Raven Storm, Moni Boyce, and the infamous Nathan Colston. Those are going to be the live interviews going on that day. Then there's going to be written interviews that you guys will be able to go back and ask them things from Raimi Wolf, Laurel Emily Gray, Brandon Gillum, G.E. Steels, J.A. LaFrance, and Ruth G. Giuliano. And Gothic Moms, T.A. Mormon, she has decided to I've got her down on written interviews too. I haven't added her to that list, but I've added her where it counts. So you guys get it out there. Go in, copy the link to the event if you haven't yet. Jackie, you know people. You know you're in groups we're not in. So go in there and copy the link to that event and get it out there. Please, 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 please. We want a great turnout. It's from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Because the last time I threw an all-day party, it about killed me. And so, yeah, I can't do that anymore. But this is going to be good, y'all. It's going to be good. And yes, I will wrap up the party with a live interview, so don't worry. And there might be a couple of live reads snuck in there. Depends on how the internet decides to be going Saturday. So, Vincy batting down the hatches because I saw where there's a tropical storm headed your way. Nina, batten down your hatches. We got tropical storm Gonzalez or something coming up your way. So, alrighty. I think that's it. Everybody, be safe out there. Please go read a book. Please go read this book. Oh my gosh, I need somebody to talk about it with. Yes, if you guys all go get this book, we'll open up a chat room in the group and we'll talk about it. Because I really need to talk to somebody about this. Alrighty, I wish it was going to be a wet week in here. I don't know if you guys heard there was thunder back in here a while ago. The storms are going all around us. This is what it does every summer. It'll go within a mile or two around us. But this little hole right here never gets any rain. And we've gone with like 2 or 3 weeks now without rain. So we need rain. Alrighty, I'm going to shut it up now. Because, I can talk all night because that's what I do. Apparently, I enjoy talking to myself. So, alrighty. You guys have a great weekend. I'll see you Saturday. And happy reading.